Who are we?
What are we?
I mean, how are we?
Where and why are we?
I don't know. But more importantly, where do I put my hands?
I don't know. I've been trying to figure that out too.
Well, let's just find out everything here on BrandProof.
The BrandProof Podcast is on. The BrandProof Podcast is on. The BrandProof Podcast is on. Here's the BrandProof Podcast Show.
Welcome, everyone, to our first inaugural episode of the BrandProof Podcast. I'm Ryan, and my co-host is
Lindsay.
And together, we decided to come up with this whole show based around everything from marketing, advertising, video, AI, anything creative that deals with kind of our arena because our background is in that. So today on this episode, we're trying to talk about kind of the who, what, when, where, why, how of it.
Right.
And who we are.
Right. Because, you can be creative, but you have to be actually in the real world too, right? And so we had been talking about, it's so interesting in our world. There are basic fundamentals we have to know in marketing, branding, etc. But then it's ever evolving. I mean, one day you think you have the Google algorithm down pat, and then the next day it changes. Or all of a sudden AI hits you front and center. So What do? How do you stay on top of those marketing trends? So he said, wouldn't this be a great thing to offer people, whether they're in the marketing field or whether they're just business owners, small, big, large corporate entities?
And here's the crazy part. So my background is predominantly started in video production.
Right.
I did that for quite a long time, which then got into marketing both for myself with my own agency, a little boutique agency,
right,
to doing it corporate and doing it on a much, much bigger level. And so my big thing that I kind of like to harp on the most, or that I'm more attracted to is the branding aspect of it, is the story of it. I'm big on story. I'm big on visual. I'm big on what do things look like, not just in a a marketing piece, but an exterior of a building or an interior of a room or how someone answers a phone.
You're that first impression guy.
Yeah, I am very much that first impression guy. I want to know when a customer pulls up to the parking lot for the very first time, what do they see?
Right.
Or if they're driving past the place on the road, what do they see? I'm big into that kind of stuff.
Right. You feel the emotion and you know the importance of the story. And I would say, to be my own self-critique here, and you can interject as you want, but I'm more of the metrics. Like, does the data support this? And what are those key elements that we're trying to portray for the business, for the client? And once we do create that content and that brand, are we meeting those goals? Are we speaking to our target audiences? And are they having the traffic they want? And at the end of the day, the actual customers, clients, are they selling the product?
So I guess you could say then I'm more of the wild and crazy guy.
We could definitely say that.
And you're more of the, let's play by the rules, Ryan. Let's get back in your lane, dude.
Yes, exactly.
Right. And I'll tell you why. And these are the metrics because of this data point and this data point.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think together we make a good team.
Yeah. We have come to find out over this experience is we're kind of two sides of the same coin. It's the exact same coin, just two ways of
looking at
mm-hmm. all things marketing and branding and that kind of stuff. So I think that's kind of a neat idea. And one of the things, if you guys out there will please forgive us. So because our backgrounds are in doing this and together we have been doing this, well, we won't date ourselves, but quite a while.
I know you'll eventually date us.
Quite a while. I'm an old creative dude now, and she's not.
I'm an old creative girl.
Especially not the dude part, but we this is actually our first time where we are featuring ourselves on camera.
Right.
Usually I have spent years telling people the way the set should look, the way that they should sit up. Speaking of me, I'm slouching, the way that
Well, for me, I can tell someone how to do a speech. I could write the speech. I'm all about communication, and whether it's nonverbal or verbal communication, I love to be behind the scenes. I love to make my clients look good. If it's social media, whatever it might be, websites. But yes, very much out of the comfort zone for me.
right. So together we decided to do our very first on-camera podcast, and we're doing it without all of our crews that we normally hire. We're doing it without any production staff that we would normally do. I mean, the truth of it is, it's Lindsay, myself, Ryan, and my wife over there, Courtney, is learning how to switch cameras for the very first time, multiple cameras. So
She's amazing.
she's very amazing. I mean, to keep up with me.
Yes.
I mean, hey, you don't have to agree with that. But yeah, so we are just going out on our own, and everything that we've done for this show is just from our own head.
Absolutely.
We've decided to take the bull by the horns and just launch a show, because we really think that we have a lot, or I know I've had a lot of business owners, and I'm sure you have too, that in our daily lives that have just asked us, Ryan or Lindsay, what do you think the best marketing advice should be for my business? Or what do you think I should do for X, Y, and Z? And I know for myself, if whatever I'm doing, I will stop and I will give them free advice and tell them what I think they should probably do and not do. And so we thought, maybe we need a podcast show that kind of helps people through that. So whether it's just you and I talking things out, or we have a guest
Right.
that we bring on a future episode we do.
Yeah. And what works for one person doesn't work for everybody, right? Like
Yeah.
I could give one piece of advice to you, for instance, when you had a merger and acquisition company,
Yeah.
but that's not going to be the same piece of advice I might give to a physician or to a boutique in the downtown area and how to connect with their audiences, right? So it's all going to be different. And that's why I think bringing in the guests and having them say what's worked for them, what hasn't worked for them, how have they stood out in their own crowds, what is their crowd?
And I mean, for me personally, I would really like to know, like, after all these episodes that we're going to do, after the guests that we're going to talk to and interview, is try to figure out what commonalities of marketing are all the same across the board, whether it is a big, corporate company or a small mom and pop.
What are the marketing sacraments?
Yeah. I mean, what are some of the basic do's and don'ts?
Right. For sure.
That sometimes I know I just overlook it because I assume that should already be known, but it's really not. There's
Right.
really a lot that.
And we could go in assuming all day long, but we also,
Yeah, absolutely.
I think, yes, I could go down that path a little bit, but I will say the best way to assume is assume people know nothing. And that's what I tell clients all the time. Assume the person you're talking to knows nothing about your business each and every time.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, because, if you start from that point, usually like what I like to do is put together like a little marketing audit, and I will research the heck out of XYZ's company and try to figure out who I also think they are and who I think they're good at and what they may not know. I like to come up with things so when they tell me who they believe they are and what their mission is, I can also then say,
And take
Did you
that
think
to a
about
real
this?
world strategy. Let's pretend that they don't have a you or me, right?
Yeah.
And I'm a business owner and I'm putting out there on the web every little detail that I do. And I'm trying to put that in my social media, but I don't understand why people aren't following my page or why people aren't engaging in the information I'm putting out. I think that they need to step back and search for themselves and look at themselves from an absolute stranger aspect. Because once you get into your own business, you know everything about it. You know the weeds, you know everything. And so you want to put all of that out there, but people don't want to know that. They just want to know, how is your business going to value me? And how am I going to build a relationship with you? How am I going to feel like you're more special than the person next door? So just stepping outside of themselves and looking at it from the public perspective. That's one thing that doesn't change for anybody.
Or I do know, as a business owner myself, sometimes because they are getting into the nitty gritty of it all, they're getting into the weeds, they push marketing off. They don't budget for it. They don't plan for it. They build their business from the ground up. Everything looks good. But then it's that light bulb moment at the very end where they go, oh, I need to figure out how to market this, and I haven't put any thought into it.
Or they don't want to come across as bragging about themselves. That's the number one thing I think I see is a lot of business owners have that practical entrepreneurial side of their brains, and they don't want to look like, oh, look at me, I'm, bright, shiny, etc. So I think that sometimes they just don't understand that marketing doesn't have to be flashy. Marketing and branding really is about exactly who you are and packaging it in a way that people understand it and are attracted to it and then actually want to engage with it. So,
and I hope with this show, I think I just cut out. I hope with this show that people start learning the difference between both marketing and branding, because sometimes I could see where if you had no prior experience with either, how does it make sense to you?
Well, I kind of think branding's the big umbrella, and we'll talk about that a lot.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Marketing falls under that, right?
Well, speaking of branding, do you want to get into your little segment that you want to talk about?
Yes, but I do want to say you're being a little bit modest on one thing.
What? What am I being modest?
You are being modest on the fact that this was a brainchild of both you and myself.
I mean, yeah. So.
Right. Do you want to tell them how you kind of roped me in it and said, okay, you hooked me like
How don't you tell the story and I will.
I'm not going to tell the story, but I'm just going to say it has to do with a little bit of bourbon, right?
Yes. Well, I mean, we both, I don't know about you, but my mic is completely out. Oh, well, I am talking here, but I no longer have headphones. There it goes. I guess we can hear myself now because I could not. I was talking in the ether.
Yes, your background of production, video, etc. You knew how to pull something like this off, and you were able to step out of the comfort zone for yourself and convince me. But it took bourbon to really convince me. Let's be honest.
So yeah, my background is in, I kind of said video production, but I used to do sets and lighting and all that stuff for a living, but that was years ago. And this is my first foray into it in a lot of years. And yeah, so I had this idea and I pitched it to Lindsay, and we both found that we have more things in common than we ever thought we did before. Because what you guys don't know is that when I did have an acquisition company, I hired Lindsay as my PR person because I had businesses all over the Southeast that needed some dire attention in the PR realm, and I know nothing about PR. I am not a PR guy.
But you knew the need was there, and you knew the need for some sort of what is our plan for all the what ifs.
Yeah, right. I knew we needed PR.
Right.
I knew the what ifs, and I knew that we needed that crisis communication plan.
Right.
But at the time, there was no AI for me to ask.
Right.
Google only does so much. Trust me, I Googled everything. But hiring a professional that's experienced in this kind of realm really actually saved us a lot of money in the long run.
Right. Because you needed to identify the human element and then how they react. It's all human psychology. So we started with a crisis communication manual for your corporate team, but it did quickly morph to each team that you had, was a part of your company and part of the merger and acquisition, and then each team member. So it really evolved, just like we'll be talking about.
And do you remember? I actually, I didn't know any PR people at the time,
Right.
and I went to good old trusty old LinkedIn and typed in public relations near me, and boom, there's Lindsay, and I contacted her on a whim, and she contacted me back.
I know. And that's so interesting because, LinkedIn, speaking of evolution, has come a long, long way.
Absolutely.
And originally I had just gone on LinkedIn to kind of stay in contact with my business friends, peers, etc. I was not working it. I wasn't using it to gain new clients. In fact, at the time I wasn't seeking new clients, right? It was on a word of mouth basis. But it's very interesting to see the power of the different social media channels, this case in point, LinkedIn, and how that one piece of you becoming aware that I exist because I just had an account on LinkedIn,
Right.
and then falling into what you were looking for, and now the relationship we've built right there is a perfect example of how social media, etc., can really play into your whole marketing plan.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
So your
I
journey.
totally agree.
All right. So what do you want to talk about now, Ryan?
Well, you came to me late last night and said, I've got this branding idea, this branding thing I want to talk about, and I'm going to let you take it away.
Well, I was thinking, since this is our first podcast,
Right.
there's certain fundamentals. It's like a foundation if we're building a house, right? That I think that we need to get out there because we're going to really revisit it all along the way. And I know that you told me I can't be boring on this thing, so I'm going to try my hardest not to be. But I do have people all the time say, well, what is that magic solution? What is the crowning jewel if I really just want to get started? Where do I even begin?
Yes.
And I go back to, it's great to know everything about your company, but you've got to stop and you've got to think this. The key to everything that I'm going to do, whether it's my website, whether it's my social media, whether it's the content and communications that I'm putting out there, I have to have three things. Do you know what those three things are, Ryan? Yes.
No.
Okay. Simplicity.
I was just going to say that, simplicity.
Mm-hmm.
That was my number 2, but go ahead, number 1.
Okay. And I'll explain in a second. Consistency.
Consistency.
You know what I mean there?
Sure. Go ahead.
And fabulous design.
Fabulous. I go with fantastic design.
I know. That's your word,
That's
right?
my word, fantastic.
But really, if you think about it, you can know everything in the world, but the human mind, psychology, cognitive retention.
That's a big word. Cognitive retention.
I know, but the mind needs simplicity. So the more simple you can make something, it actually is an inverse relationship. So your mind retention rate increases. So
Give me an example on this. Do you have an example you can?
Oh, I do. You want to look at some websites that I have?
Absolutely. Whatever you got, because
you
cognitive retention is generally something I'm not great at unless there's a video involved. And then
I
I'm
have
okay.
a perfect example. Have you ever heard of McDonald's?
Absolutely.
The restaurant company?
And it's funny that you say that, and I'll bring it up later in the podcast.
So let's say we have the McDonald's sign.
Yes.
You have the arches, you have the red, and you have that McDonald's. Always the same font. But then, like our local McDonald's, did you notice what's missing off the sign?
The word McDonald's?
Yes. Do you think that matters?
No.
Why?
I'm thinking golden arches.
Right.
I'm thinking French fries.
How many brands can you think of that a 2-year-old sees the golden arches or sees that insignia, that logo, and a 92-year-old, and they both are aware and they both recognize it because they've used simplistic design, they've used consistent design, and they've used fabulous design in the way that it is recognizable and it's relevant. They've evolved through the years, but you don't even notice it. So there's you an example.
I love it.
Okay, good.
I love it so much that we may circle back on this topic
Okay.
a little bit later in this podcast.
Awesome. Because I really would like to go into a little more of the fabulous design too once we get there.
Or fantastic, whichever you want to say. I've heard it both. I've heard it both
I
ways.
do want fabulous. Yes.
I've heard it both ways.
So back to your real world story. What were you going to tell us about that?
Real world story on branding. Okay, I was thinking about this. I once had a client, this is years ago, and I had just started I was transitioning from the video production world to the marketing world, because when I was doing video production, I was doing a whole lot of commercials and corporate videos,
Right.
and because I like to give out free advice,
What?
and because I have so many ideas off the top of my head, I would be with this client, you name the client, and we would be done with our shoot. And I'd had all that time to look at their business. And I would then say, after we were done, I'd say, if you would just do this and mix it with this, you'd be a lot more successful and you'd have a lot more money.
Absolutely.
And they would go, really? And I'd say, yeah, and here's how I would do it. And I would tell them how I would do it. And then I would say, have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye. And I did that over and over. And then my wife, Courtney, she was with me on a shoot one day and she heard me doing this, and we were in the car leaving, and she goes, Ryan, that was a really, really great idea that you gave that client. And I said, well, thanks. I'm pretty proud of it myself. She goes, how much did you charge them? What do you mean? She goes, you should be charging for that kind of stuff, because they're going to go back and they're going to implement that stuff and they're going to do it. And that was all your idea.
Right.
And I said, well, I've never thought about doing that before. I guess I'll start offering marketing services to the video production services.
And I'm thinking of the other side as the business owner or the manager. You have a great idea, but then I'm left to, how do I do it? How do I pull it off?
Yeah. So what I did is I would then go and offer them and say, hey, besides video production, I'll do your marketing stuff. And here's what I would do.
Mm-hmm.
And I would already know, right? Well, when I was first starting out, I picked up a dental client and they needed a whole rebrand thing going. Their logo looked like it was straight up, into the 90s, early 2000s, when the internet's just kind of getting going.
Absolutely.
And those logos that are just, the dental company had been around a while. I won't say which one. But my first attempt at a logo, before I even brought in a graphic designer, because I do no Photoshop and all that, is I learned this one important lesson about branding. And it's about color. Color is highly, highly, highly important when it comes to a brand. And the color red does not need to be anywhere near a dental company whatsoever.
I'm thinking Dracula.
Well, yeah, because I turned in this beautiful red looking logo. It wasn't all red, but red logo. And the first thing the dentist said to me is, so you gave me a bloody logo, huh?
And they weren't
What?
European.
And I said, what? No, this is a new kind of modern logo. He said, Ryan, it's a known fact. You don't include red when you do dental stuff. And
It's kind of like brown, right?
I did not know that. So yeah, that was my huge, and I've never forgotten that.
Right.
As long as I live, whenever I think of the color red,
Sure.
I think that, seeing that McDonald's logo, that was kind of one way. It was kind of an orangey red, but
I have to be honest, my two least favorite colors in branding are red and yellow.
red and yellow.
But what works for the company doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for me or
Right.
be my preference, right? And
Right.
so that is to go back to what you were saying about branding. It really is so individualized on the client, what they offer, and who they're marketing to. Because at the end of the day, I can't imagine McDonald's anything but red and yellow.
I can't either. Could you imagine
No.
like purple and
Well, when Walmart changed,
Brown?
remember when they changed to the blue and yellow,
blue
and then
and
they
yellow,
started
yeah.
doing the green? What were they?
I don't remember.
Courtney, do you know?
I-
Yeah,
I'm too young for that.
I think it was brown. Wasn't it brown and white or something?
It might have been.
Yeah, but anyway, it was like, but then I liked it. It worked for them. Typically, it doesn't.
There's a lot of logos, and that kind of brings me into my next little topic I want to go over.
Talk to me.
So last night I found some logos that I want you to look at, and I haven't shown them to you yet.
Okay.
That I want to get your kind of your hot take on it, good or bad.
Okay.
You know, and see what you think. And what I'll do is I'll show it on the full screen.
And I have to say a caveat in case anyone's watching this. These are our personal opinions, right? So
yeah, all of this is personal opinions. Yeah. Okay. The first one up is
Nike.
Nike.
Yes.
What do we think?
I think it's brilliant.
How'd you know it was Nike? It doesn't say Nike on there.
Goes back to the branding and the awareness and a very, very big budget, right? To pull that off. But there's a whole story behind Nike and how they got their brand. But the swoosh, I think it's brilliant. Simple, easy, and it also gives that energy feeling of and speaks to the athlete. I love it.
Yeah, I my first thought is sports.
Right.
Nike sports. I don't know why, but that is it's just drilled in my brain. That's what I think of.
Okay.
Next one up.
Apple.
Apple. How'd you know?
Well,
it's an apple.
I'm an Apple fan. But it's, one of the most leading huge companies in America. But besides that, I've often thought about the Apple also has a really interesting story. But they went so simple with the Apple, and then they took that bite out of it, which I think plays into a myriad of things. The bite out of the Apple obviously plays into computer byte web world, but that is not the major intention of it. The major intention was putting it out there where people felt comfortable and it made them unique in some sort of way. Because if it was just a regular Apple, I don't think it'd be as dynamic. Do you agree?
Right. No, I totally agree. Then it would just be an apple. Okay, next one up. Easy one. Coca-Cola, and it's a red logo.
It is. And I have to say, it works for them because although the fonts have evolved through the years, it is still very vintage, and they've kept that vintage feel. If there was no Coca-Cola in the world and somebody came to you and said, I have this amazing new soft drink, we won't mention, how it began because it was really Coke back in the day. But I have this wonderful soft drink and I want you to come up with a really great logo and font. Would you necessarily have gravitated towards that cursive font? Would you have?
No, but I heard, and I do not know this as fact, but I heard that there was no trademark on Coca-Cola anymore.
Interesting.
That anyone can use the style, just not in the words Coca-Cola. You can use the font for other things. Same way with this next one.
Disney.
Yeah.
You can use it now. It's not trademarked.
I have come across this font on many a font websites. I don't know if that's trademarked or not. I don't know. I would assume Disney would.
At the end of the day, is the Disney font my favorite? Absolutely not. But it's worked for them. And I do see the beauty in that they have brought a beautiful mesh and a combination in the world of youthful fun, appealing to the children, but also classy, sophisticated to the parents too, but in a way that it's not too fancy, but it's very diplomatic and it's very, simple and intriguing.
It's fantastical. I just made that up.
Fabulous.
Fabulous. I've heard it both ways. Okay, then the next one the last one of our good logos. Mm-hmm. I told you I was coming back around. McDonald's. It's like
that's funny.
We're reading each other's mind all the freaking time.
And honestly, I did not know.
I didn't
that
tell
this
you.
was in there.
And then
That's
you bought
so
a McDonald's.
Funny. That's funny.
McDonald's. And you know what? I was thinking about this when we were talking about it earlier. It kind of reminds me of ketchup and mustard.
Yes, it does.
It has that burger feel. I don't know why, but that ketchup and mustard, golden arches, French fry, everything
funny.
about that says burger.
Right.
And now I'm hungry.
And you got me thinking of the Hamburglar. Do they even use him anymore?
No, they got rid of all the grimace and Hamburglar, and they got rid of all that.
I love it. Remember the glasses you used to get with your Happy Meals, the real glass? Can you imagine getting a real glass now?
The fried apple pies.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
still have those.
Now, McDonald's, talking about branding, you know, they really changed their restaurants because growing up, I had a birthday party there. There was, they did McDonald's cakes. So I had Ronald McDonald at a birthday.
What was the cookie? The cookie.
They had the cookies.
The dude in the little suit. The cookie something.
Do you remember Courtney? Whereas Grimace was the purple one. He was
this
cookies.
Dude had the glasses.
With the Hamburglar.
Was that? Well, I don't know. Maybe.
I don't know. We're dating ourselves. But where I was going was, you know, growing up, McDonald's really branded themselves as a childhood
They did.
burger place. With their playgrounds were awesome. They had a lot to do. Parents could, you know, sit down and eat while their kids played. And they have totally changed their brand. I can't find any more playgrounds. They got rid of a lot of the fun stuff.
But, you know, that's where practicality, you know, the real world meets creativity. Because if I were betting, and I don't know, I did not research this, and I don't know for a fact.
Sure.
But the world has evolved so much. Back in the day, our parents, I mean, would throw us on those hot slides and we'd come down and we might have burn marks on our heinies, but it was okay because we were entertained and we were having a good time. Oh, and remember those things that used to bounce, those little animals and stuff you could get on and bounce? But as the world's evolved, so has lawsuits, risk, liability.
Hot coffee.
And then COVID, right? Germs,
Right.
etc. So I would guess that did not serve them as their business model and that they had to rethink their marketing strategy because they could not focus so much on the playgrounds and that sort of thing.
But I would disagree with them, though. I would be that voice, that one guy in the background that says, I don't like the new modern McDonald's style that looks like everything else. Doesn't.
Yeah, but think about also diets and nutrition. Now people really, really care more about that, you know,
Right.
as a society or as a whole. So I bet that they had to kind of vamp up and rebrand themselves so people didn't think, okay, it's a bunch of grease, it's a bunch of French fries. They felt it was a little more tangible and not as bad for them, maybe.
And now I'm hungry about French fries, salty, greasy French fries. I love the show. Can we in the future on this show have people deliver food and then we critique
Yes,
the
I think
food of
that's
that,
a
the
great
marketing
idea.
and branding of said food?
I think that's
of
a
said
great
fast
idea.
food.
Mm-hmm.
That would be fun.
I think it would be.
Yeah, I'm all for that. And especially more bourbon. More bourbon could really help.
Exactly.
What's your favorite bourbon?
My absolute favorite. Well, it depends on, am I mixing it? Okay. Can let me talk a little bit about that.
Yes.
My favorite is Blanton's, just straight.
Well, I love Blanton.
Yeah. I mean, it's smooth,
That's probably one
etc.
of my
If I were
favorites.
to back up more, and I don't want to offend anyone out there, I feel more attached to Tennessee bourbons versus Kentucky bourbons. Not that I dislike Kentucky bourbons. It's just that, you know, young college days, Jack Daniels, Jim Beam, that's what I really started my bourbon journey on. But then I marry somebody that's actually a bourbon connoisseur. It's kind of like drinking Bud Light and then discovering craft beers, right?
Right.
So I have, as the years have gone on, still not going to disclose that, Ryan, on the first episode, I have grown to having a better taste. Obviously, when I can afford a better bourbon, then my taste has grown. So Blanton's straight up. But if I'm mixing, I like Gentleman Jack. I like 1792. Love 1792, actually. It's one of my go-tos. So,
You know
about
what
you?
I'm drinking right now? Not here,
What?
but at home.
What?
I love, and I can't get enough of it, is Penelope Architect.
Yes, I've had that.
It's a sweeter,
It is.
almost, I don't know.
And it doesn't have as much of a bite. It's kind of smooth.
It's smooth. It's completely smooth. And what I like is I like it smoked.
Yes.
Smoked, old-fashioned
Right.
with Penelope. Oh, man.
When you smoke them, do you like to do a flavor or just straight smoke?
Straight smoke.
What about your bitters?
It depends. I'm not as picky.
Mm-hmm.
It's because it's a sweeter
Right.
kind of alcohol. So I don't know. I'm good either way.
Right. I haven't met too many bourbon whiskeys that I don't like, just to be very honest.
You know what we need? We need a bourbon sponsor. Look at the logo. I mean, that right there, that says bourbon all day long. I mean,
And then we could
what a
have their
great
logo
brand.
right here.
What a great brand that would be.
Yes.
All right. All right. Well, Lindsay, cheers to our first episode.
Cheers. And we
Cheers.
need refills.
Need refills. Oh, waiter. Courtney. Thank you all so much for watching our very first episode of BrandProof.
And be sure to like, subscribe, and comment below.
And don't forget, I'm Ryan,
And I'm Lindsay.
and you're watching the BrandProof Podcast.